Hello, welcome to the ABOO Book Club and welcome to our Meet the Author evening with the wonderful Jackie Weaver. Hi, Jackie.
Hello there.
Lovely to have you here. So Jackie is the Chief Officer of the Cheshire Association of Local Councils. And as I think most of us know, in December 2020, she acted as the facilitator at a meeting of the Handforth Parish Council. And since the recording of the meeting went viral in February 2021, Jackie has found herself absolutely catapulted to fame. And she's been immortalized in sponge cake, had her face and catchphrases printed on T-shirts and fridge magnets, and she's even cut her first dance track. She's got into comedy. She was on Celebrity Mastermind on Saturday. She's doing the most amazing things, and she's still doing her job at Cheshire Association of Local Councils. So Jackie also recently launched her chart-topping podcast, Jackie Weaver Has the Authority, and she's hosted a wide range of guests there, which I'd like to ask you about later, including Jack Whitehall, Anton Dubeck and Jeremy Vine. So can you believe it? It's just an incredible transformation. And of course, the vital thing is that Jackie has written her book. Jackie Weaver, you do have the authority here. So Jackie, congratulations on that. And so let's talk about you. And so I want to start with what it was actually like in that council meeting, in the video, in the Zoom call, the video. What was it like? Was it as bad as it looked? Was it worse?
It's a really good question, and it's difficult for me to answer it in that moment, because how I feel about it now is different from how I felt at the time. I think that back in December, it still felt like we were finding our way with Zoom or Teams or whatever we were using. So there's a lot, if you're managing it on your own, there's a lot to think about. Plus the fact that I didn't really know the councillors terribly well. They had members of the public there. I'm awful with names. so I'm trying to work out who were councillors and who were members of the public. And so it was incredibly busy. At the same time as kind of trying to deal with the rapidly escalating tension that was clearly there. So in that moment, I guess I was just busy. Yeah. I didn't really have time to process any kind of emotional connection with what was happening at all.
And I mean, we just got a snippet of what was there, I think. How far were you into the council meeting at that time?
Was it kicked off straight away?
Right, that was how it kicked off.
Yeah. Well, it started a moment or two earlier. And you know when you just get a feel for where something's going to go. And you know how on your computer, there bottom right hand side, it tells you the time.
Yeah.
A clock there. So it started with, it's 7 o'clock, Chairman, shall we get the meeting started? It's not quite 7 yet. Right. Round one. So it kind of, that set the tone. We were clearly spoiling for a fight.
Yeah.
It was only going to be about what time it was.
Wow. So it just, and what I want to know is that typical of parish council meetings?
Not at all. But parish councils, by their very nature, and parish and town councils are the same entity, really. They are parochial. They are made up of neighbours. They are made up of people who live next to each other in the community. So all the tensions, all the scandal and gossip and everything else, it's already there. But usually they rub along quite nicely. When you think about it, I've been doing my job for about the last 25 years. And I don't think anybody other than a serving soldier would necessarily want to go into that kind of conflict zone on a daily basis. They're just not like that. But sometimes there are a group of people or two people that just don't get on. And that was the reason I was there that night, rather
That's what
than,
I was going to ask. Why were you there? Yes.
because normally, if a meeting doesn't have a clerk, and we had suspended the clerk, so they didn't have one. I'd normally ask one of my colleagues to field it. It's not usually a big thing, but knowing Handforth as I knew Handforth of old, I knew there was going to be some problem. There always is. The personalities there, and I wasn't wrong.
Right. So Faye's asked, what happened in the meeting before? I think she means the meeting before. As there was clearly some history. What had provoked all the angst that was going on in this meeting?
Oh, it wasn't about a meeting. I mean, this had been brewing for about 4 months, so that there used to be a different power balance in the council. So there used to be 7 councillors, 3 on one side, 4 on the other side.
Right.
And then we have what we call the 6-month rule. So if you fail to attend a meeting for a period of 6 months as a councillor, you automatically cease to be on the council.
Oh, right.
So the clerk had declared the vacancy, and now we have a 3-3 split. And the 3 that were 4 absolutely refused to accept it. And hence they suspended the clerk, they wouldn't hold meetings, etc. So that meeting eventually was called by 2 councillors, as they are able to do.
Right. And what happened after that meeting? Did you manage to resolve it? Are they still meeting? Are they still at daggers drawn?
Oh, well, it kind of resolved itself in some ways, since the 3 councillors eventually stood down.
Oh.
However, they were already the subject of a standards board complaint. Not to do with that meeting, but that meeting was kind of like the icing on the cake. And they resigned just before the report was published. The council has now gone on to rename itself Handforth Town Council, and it's a big place, it's Handforth, so perfectly reasonable. And they have new councillors. It's an ordinary functioning council.
Wonderful. Well, that's good to hear. That's great. So I'd love to talk to you about your book, Jackie. So, I mean, first question is, how did the book come about? Was it your idea or were you approached? What was the story of the book?
Well, I don't think it had ever crossed my mind I might write a book, ever.
Really?
Absolutely. It kind of, I don't know, I kind of had this impression that if you're going to write a book, you're probably going to have to put years of your life on the side. You're going to have to agonize over it for years. And a publisher got in touch with me and said, would I like to write a book? And I thought, no, not really. I don't really have the time. But they didn't take no for an answer. And I thought about it and I thought, well, why not? And again, it's kind of like the way I've approached the whole of this year. I've had the opportunity to do things that you just would never have expected to have the opportunity to do. So why would you turn it down?
Absolutely, yes.
And then I thought, well, what am I going to write about? So I thought, well, what do I know? Because I heard somewhere that you should always write about things you know about. And I thought, yeah, but if I write a book about parish councils, we'll only sell 6 copies. It's not exactly going to be a blockbuster, is it? So I thought, well, actually, my husband and I often have that moment, when you're getting into bed at night and you're kind of sitting there talking about the day. And time again, we're kind of sitting there shaking our heads thinking, how did such and such happen? Because it's common sense. Why didn't they just apply some common sense? And so I thought, yeah, I think I could write about that.
Fantastic, yes, and you have, and it's brilliant. It's really, it is absolutely commonsensical, and yet it's really inspiring and very easy to read. So Faye says, I loved the bit in the book about being properly dressed even on Zoom calls. I had my interview for director and I dressed as though I was going to the office, full suit and shoes, despite the fact that I was at home. I think that was excellent advice. So
but I don't know about you, but I feel different in my work clothes. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't go to work in a power suit, but I don't go to work in jeans either. And there's something about, I mean, even kind of like wearing proper shoes. For me, it's a kind of different mindset. So I felt that kind of resonated with me.
Yeah, absolutely. So okay, so you agreed to write the book and you worked out what you wanted to say, and then, so how did you actually write it? What was your process? Did you plan it out like I'm always telling people to do and then write, or did you just write?
No, I was very lucky, in that I got my own mentor to work with me on it.
Fantastic. Oh, right. So that came from
Yeah.
the publisher,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. And it was quite interesting. I know this sounds really weird, but the first time I actually read the book from beginning to end was when I recorded it.
Oh, right.
At
Yeah.
that point, it had only ever been kind of read in chunks.
Yeah.
That makes sense,
Yes, yes, that makes perfect sense. Yes.
together. But actually, the recording that I did of it was great. I was really happy with that because it felt really natural. It was my voice.
Yes, exactly. And I think, I mean, I lots of the authors here have recorded their audio books, and I think it's really, especially if unless it's fiction or something, I think it's really important to talk to your listeners, your readers, in your own voice so they can hear what they're saying. So Sapna Piru, Sapna, thank you very much for introducing us to Jackie. You were both on a call together, and Sapna kind of made the connection. So I'm very grateful to you, Sapna. Sapna says, "Oh, this is going back to the." Oh, it says one of my clients wore her heels around the house every day through lockdown when she was working. Gosh, that's impressive.
Antoinette, by the way.
Oh, right. Oh, that's great. Well, thanks for being here too, Sapna. That's wonderful. So you're all about branding, so yeah, that makes a point. What do you think of Sapna? What do you think of Jackie's brand?
Oh, I think it's wonderful. It's just so authentic. It's just, it's like it was almost an accidental brand that you've created, Jackie, just by being you, and everybody seems to have just. You've hit some kind of zeitgeist of like, kind of that we've all been in a Zoom room where you've wanted to shut someone off in their place or been talked over, and you actually did it, and it went viral. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think you're the icon for me, Jackie, for the older woman taking control and having power and shutting down the idiocy around you.
I do often feel quite a fraud, though. I mean, it's kind of, in the very early days, I kind of got that people were interested in the video and wanted to hear more about the background to it. That made sense.
Yeah.
And then as time goes on, you think, well, what else can you say? That in itself isn't something that's going to have people sitting on the edge of the chairs waiting for the next episode. But I've not really had to craft anything to kind of sell, as it were. It just kind of feels like people are not asking a great deal of me, other than to just pitch up and say something.
Well, you say that, but I mean, this you've taken the ball and run with it in an extraordinary kind of way. I mean, I don't think many people would have had the courage and the ability and the chutzpah to actually just go with it and become this celebrity that you've become. I mean, do you think if this had happened to the other people in your office, do you think the same effects would have happened, or do you think you actually do have something quite special? That's a difficult question to ask you, of course, but
well, the last bit's easy. Do I think I have something special? No, I genuinely don't. And often, before we record, I'll say to people, why are you interested in me? Why am I here? And it's kind of like they laugh when I ask, as if it's kind of like the most ridiculous question you've ever asked, and yet I think I still don't get it.
Well, that's very kind of charming and modest of you, but just tell us what you were telling me before. What has your week been like this week? What have you done this week?
I mean, that's the other thing, is that, of course, having embraced this, I was only going to embrace this for a weekend. It wasn't. I didn't for 1 minute think it would last longer than the weekend. And then we just kept adjusting the goals. So, well, it won't last the week. Well, it won't last the month, you know. And I had this feeling that come the 1st of 2022, then nobody would be interested. But if anything, 2022 is just as busy as 2021. So over the last 5 days, I've done ITV News over in Manchester. Then I've also done Good Morning Britain on Monday morning. I was on telly, but it was a pre-record for Celebrity Mastermind. That was on Saturday. On Sunday, I did 2 live comedy events.
That's so interesting. Tell us about those as well, because those sound hilarious.
Well, it's kind of funny that kind of people pick up on the kind of comedy part of me. I don't think of myself as a comedian, and yet somehow I'm quite comfortable in that space. So the person that I do does the podcast for me said, why don't you do a live comedy event? And when something is so far off in the future that it is painless to say yes. So you go, yeah. And then suddenly a script is in front of you and you think, it'll be fine. And then suddenly it's next week. So again, I just kind of approached it with the same kind of attitude as I have to everything else. We were in Balham, live audience, 3 comedians. I just kept telling myself, they're comedians, they'll do all the heavy lifting. I'll just smile a lot. But they it didn't quite turn out that way. So we kind of arranged it so it's a bit like a parish council meeting. And the public participation, it's that part of a council meeting where you invite the audience to participate, or public to participate. It went really well.
Sounds brilliant. Fantastic. Are you doing some more? Can we come along and see them?
I don't know. I might have peaked.
Oh, I'm sure you haven't. But
one of the things I feel very sensitive about is that when you're working with people who their job is media, their job is to be a comedian, and they've been kind of working at that and on that for years, and they work very hard and don't get paid a great deal. I'm terribly mindful that I'm a newcomer and I seem to have had it all handed to me.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I don't have to go and get the gigs. They just email me and say, can you come?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, somebody's saying that's imposter syndrome. You are worthy, Jackie. which is great. So, Shell, you've got a question for Jackie. Do you want to ask Jackie your question? Shell.
Hi, Jackie. Sorry, I'm dark. I'm just putting my little one to bed. But I was really interested to find out what your husband makes of this, not from a permission sense or anything like that, but how's he finding the fame that he's inadvertently found himself in? Because I remember I can't remember what the interview was, but he was asked the question who has the authority, and I suppose from a guy's perspective, that question could be quite challenging.
I guess I'm just lucky in the husband that I have. I mean, Stuart's the kind of person that when we're queuing up to pay in Lidl, turns to the person in the queue and says, "This is Jackie Weaver,
Oh.
Well, I just want to hide, but he's incredibly supportive. I mean, so much so that we have very often they film here. We've done lots of things where filming's been at the house, and one particularly memorable one was when we were. There was a whole film crew here. That was 10 people, including, yes, there's such a thing, 2 professional zombies. Because we were filming for the Disney Plus channel, having just secured seasons 1 to 10 of The Walking Dead. It's a long story as to why my name is connected with that, but I won't bore you with that. So we've got this house full of people, all up from London doing the filming. And of course, people coming up from the south don't appreciate what rural Shropshire is like. So it comes to lunchtime. And we're looking for the Uber or whatever. Uber's a drag thing. Where are we going to get food from? Well, your best bet would be popping down to the garage and picking up some sandwiches there. That's about all we do. And they looked horrified. You know, what we're going to feed everyone on. So Stuart was in the kitchen doing a production line of bacon baps for everyone. You know, they
Wonderful.
didn't. He just does it. You know.
What a great guy. Well, it's really nice to hear that you have that kind of support at home, and you have such a good male role model in your life there, when you have had some less than great role models to contend with at work.
Well, he's the kind in the book where I make you know, I kind of say you can't do everything. And you know, let go of something that you're happy to let go of. But when you let go of it, you know, don't then be watching to make sure it's done to your standards. It's about Stuart, really, because he does take on, you know, doing the cooking and the cleaning and everything. And I wouldn't necessarily have chips as often as we do. But don't.
No. So Elaine Godley, would you like to ask Jackie your question?
Hi, Jackie. I take my hat off to you. I was wondering what your favourite common sense part of the book is. You mentioned, unfortunately, I haven't read it as yet. I'm in Portugal, and it takes about 14 weeks to get anything sent over here. So, but what's your favourite or most memorable common sense thing that you've written in the book?
Gosh. I guess the one that probably speaks to me most is it's enough to be enough. One of the things that always troubles me, you know, particularly in the media, the press, you know, anything aimed at particularly young people, and more specifically young women, is about how you have to be special. You know, you've got to be the best, you've got to be special, you've got to be different. No, you really don't. You know, you are enough. It is enough to be okay.
Yes, that's wonderful, actually. And yes, and that sort of speaks to something that we were talking about before, about not having to do everything. When I did research with a number of women authors about what had held them back in the process of writing their book, a lot of them said it was because they didn't think, not just that they didn't have time, but they didn't feel they ought to, in a way, because they had caring responsibilities, not just at home, but, you know, at work. They felt responsible for their colleagues, their clients, people working for them, and that, you know, to go away and write a book was kind of selfish. I mean, did that occur to you at all?
Again, I was kind of lucky in that it kind of felt like part of work rather than a relaxation. I mean, one of the things I was surprised about when we got to the end, if you like, was how much of it was about my mother. That really surprised me. And it was good to write.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing about doing things for yourself is definitely something I recognise in me. I like knitting. I like doing all sorts of crafty things, but I can't do them until my work is done, or until I've decided my work is done. So the idea of putting work to one side because I'm tired or because I just fancy a break or something, and doing something like knitting. Now I've got to earn it.
Oh, that's interesting. But you didn't feel the book felt like part of the work rather than the kind of the outside the work, the for pleasure bit.
Yes, yeah. I don't know that I would. I suppose it's a different position from a lot of people. I didn't feel I needed to write a book.
Yeah.
But it was an opportunity.
Yes, no, absolutely. And when you were writing it, then did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy the writing process?
I did. One of the things that really surprised me was how much I got to say. Because as I was sitting there imagining it unfolding, I was thinking, well, that'd be 2 paragraphs. It was big writing because I can't think of anything else to say. And yet I found that the biggest difficulty was stopping.
Right. Oh, so you could have written much more. So is there a second book coming out?
I don't know. I don't know about that. They have asked if I would like to write another.
Oh, well, good.
I obviously feel that my name still has some currency.
I'm just sure, Jackie, it doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon. Chell also says, my friend's favorite saying is, do you have the authority? So you've actually kind of coined a complete catchphrase. Yes, that's brilliant. Bev, would you like to say what you turn what you've said here in the chat into a question for Jackie? Because I think that's very interesting. Bev, would you like to?
Yes, I'm just unmuting. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello, Bev.
Hi, sorry, I'm not on camera, but I'm sort of in my pajamas and I was putting my daughter to bed
That's
as well.
fine.
So, apologies. I think so. Jackie, I think you're wonderful, and I love the fact. I think I put in there about you being authentic, and I do wonder if we sort of. You obviously have a bit of imposter syndrome, like we all do. But actually, you are quite special, and I think it's probably refreshing. And I guess turning this into a question, do you think that people are just sort of almost tired of people who are constantly pretending to be something they're not, or people aren't sort of trusting what they always see? So that when you come along and you're completely your authentic self, it's actually really interesting to people and sort of refreshing. And do you think that might sort of lead to sort of a change in what attracts people and what captures people's interests? Sorry, it was a bit long-winded, but hopefully that makes sense.
It would be nice if it affected change. Again, kind of going back to, I think it's kind of linked to what I was talking about before, which is about, we're all aiming for a standard, that is just too high. We put incredible pressure on young people particularly, but not just young people. I mean, every advert that comes on the telly is constantly showing you how to live a better life. So the one you've got is not good enough. I mean, that's the message over and over again. And I think sometimes we have that, a real sort of sense of competition. You watch, again, my lived experience is mainly telly. But when you're watching stuff on telly, you're constantly comparing yourself to people. Well, she's taller than me, or thinner than me, or I've got bigger hair than me, or makeup's nice. I mean, it's that constant kind of anxiety over, your looks, your personality, and things like that. And I do wonder sometimes if maybe my popularity is I'm not much of a threat. So if you want to be like me, you don't have to try terribly hard.
That's not true.
I don't agree with that, Jackie. I think you've just got a wonderful personality and are very engaging. And, I think going back to the original reason why you are where you are, I think someone's already said, it just resonated that we've all been in meetings like that. And actually, it's quite inspiring how you handled that meeting. It really is. And I think, I work in government and I have some very challenging times, but, I think it resonates with everybody in various different scenarios. So I think you shouldn't underestimate your appeal at all. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, one of the things I do feel very strongly about is that I've really tried to use the media attention for something that I feel very strongly about. That's what drives me to do it. People have said to me, you must be really busy. Why don't you give up the day job? Well, for a start, the day job pays the bills. A media career definitely doesn't. But also, I just wouldn't see the point of being a media personality. That sounds so awful. But it's kind of like, well, what are you doing it for? And for me, part of it is about raising awareness of local councils, which is something that I do feel passionate about. So that being a media personality or whatever gets me invited to places that I would never be allowed before, from a work sense, you know. So that's, you know, my driving force.
That's fantastic. So what is your message, what that you want to get across about local councils? What's so powerful about them? Tell us.
Well, I think that now I will sound really boring. I think people are switched off about national politics. We started on international politics because obviously we leave that to children. And, you know, there is that perception, or people have the perception that you cannot influence national politics. And I say, it's not a perception, it's a reality. You're going to make, your vote makes no difference at all. But if you really want change, if you want to affect change, then look at your local councils, because there you can affect change, you can make a difference, and you can make a difference in a relatively short period of time. But you need to get in there.
So what you're encouraging more people to stand for council, to be
Absolutely.
councillors.
Absolutely. Because I'm afraid that, you know, the demographic of our councillors is older men and women, mainly white, 60% men, and it's not representative of our communities. But rather than kind of sitting there bitching about it, get in there.
Yeah, and you don't think, well, I suppose there is a sort of propensity for some people going in there to make it their kind of little power base, rather than kind of looking at doing good, perhaps in the wider sense. But I suppose that's the case everywhere, really.
And again, you know, that every 4 years you have the ability to throw out the council that you have and get a fresh new one, but only if you exercise that vote. So if you bear witness to your council, you see that it isn't functioning the way that you think it should do, then get in there and change it. Now, I also say that there are different things, there are different opportunities in local government. You might enjoy being a councillor. I was for 4 years and hated it. Or you might be somebody like me that works in the background with the, you know, the technicalities. So there's something there for everyone. And if it's not for you, then persuade somebody else to do it for you.
Yeah, no, that is a really great message, and it's really not said very often. People, there isn't a sort of there isn't a promotional kind of campaign for people to join local councils.
Well, there is, but it's just so weak that you don't see it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when you're talking, I mean, I talk to students, unions, universities, colleges, all sorts, and they automatically assume that when you're talking about politics, you must mean party politics and you must mean national. That's just not true.
Right. No, that's a really important message, and yeah, absolutely. So, Helen Oakwater, Helen, just going back to that original meeting that that propelled you into the public eye. Helen's got a question. Would you like to ask Jackie, Helen?
Yeah.
Hi, you're there, Helen.
I am. Look, you've caught me in the kitchen. I've got the bloody video on. In the kitchen. My question, Jackie, is I wonder what you think might have happened if the meeting had not been on Zoom but had been live and everybody had been in the room.
Really good question.
Yeah. Knowing the personalities involved, I think it would have been pretty similar. But what I would have done going into a meeting like that is made sure that we had some police, literally had some police presence. One of the people in that meeting is a very unpleasant person, and I certainly wouldn't have wanted to be in a room with them.
Gosh, yes, that makes local council sound quite quite scary, really.
Yes, it is very unusual. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, there are 10,000 of them across the country. That means we've got 100,000 councillors, because there's roughly 10 on each council. So by law of averages, we're going to have the odd peculiar personality in there, aren't we?
For sure. Kat Cripps, would you like to ask Jackie your question? That's another interesting one.
Yes, hello Jackie, hi. I just wonder how your newfound fame has gone down at work. I mean, how have they accepted this this change and this newfound sort of media person in their midst?
It's an interesting question, and it kind of maybe goes along with a question where, you know, people say, do you get stopped in the street and things like that? Not round here much. When I travel, that's when people tend to stop me in the streets, etc. As far as kind of being in Cheshire is the place, I live in Shropshire but work in Cheshire. As far as Cheshire are concerned, it's just kind of like business as usual. And I suppose for me, that's the important thing. I'm lucky in the job that I do, and it's very flexible. It's flexible, not least of which because most of our clerks work from home, you know, so that they, you know, they'll email you at odd times of the day and night, literally, or at the weekends. So plenty of time for me to kind of fill in the stuff that I do for my day job round about that. And I just have to be careful that we don't see a change in the service that we give to our members. But one of the, there's several benefits that come to us from it. One is we have a national body, the National Association of Local Councils, and part of our remit is about the promotion of the sector. And frankly, we couldn't pay for the advertising that we're getting at the moment. So nobody's going to bitch about that. And it's also, you know, that opportunity to literally break into places that we've never had seats at tables before. The Levelling Up white paper that's just been published. There's the Great and the Good are meeting, I can't remember where it is, Bolton or somewhere, in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And I've been invited to speak at that about the implications for town and parish councils. Last year, nobody would even have given them half what the parish council thought of it, you know? So those are really great opportunities that we kind of balance, I think.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's, I mean, it's so good that you're using, you know, this prominence that you have to put forward such a great message. Gemma Dilks would like to ask you a very specific question, to ask you for your advice. Gemma, would you like to ask Jackie your question?
Yes, thank you very much. So just briefly introduce myself. I'm Gemma, I'm 22 and I am a master's student based in Birmingham. And when I'm not at university, I volunteer at my local community shop. We're based at our local village hall just on the Shropshire-Staffordshire border. And the problem is we're having a bit of trouble getting the other side of the village involved and supporting the shop, because we're two very, very tiny isolated villages. You have to drive about 10 minutes to even find a co-op or a bus stop. And the shop is based in this village over here, but where I live, people don't really want to support it. I think because the parish council has had a bit of a reputation for being a bit cliquey, people think that our shop is a bit of a spin-off of the parish council and the village hall committee. In fact, one of the village hall committee's members was not very nice to me a few weeks ago, being the youngest volunteer. So how would you recommend that we could try and overcome the kind of stereotypes surrounded the type of things that we do with Little Community Shop and try and get people a little more involved?
I guess, I mean, that has so many different answers. First of all, there are people who just want leaving alone. I would just rather not have anything to do with what happens in the community. I am one of them. You know, I'm quite happy to pay my council tax, but don't ask me to bake a cake. And, you know, so you'll never have that kind of universal suffrage. But I think goes back to a previous answer, which is around one of the things that you said was a bit of an issue, was perhaps the relationship with the parish council. There are often huge tensions between village hall committees and parish councils. You know, you are in effect looking at two organisations fighting for power in a community. So elections 2023. Break into the parish council.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but it's
Gemma, you're exactly the kind of person that Jackie's, suggesting should. The younger person representing their community. It'd be brilliant. Go for it, and then write your book.
I'm not sure, but I mean, we've got a Facebook page, and I'm in charge of like the marketing. So I have kind of made some got us a little brand in a way, like a logo, a colour scheme, got some nice leaflets. And I think it's more, like not just getting people to volunteer, but just getting people to come and buy the stuff, really. People say, oh, it's too expensive, and then they have an Ocado van stuff outside their house. And I think it is just a bit, it's hard to get people on board, but I think we just got to keep trying, really.
I think the other thing is, do you belong to any organisations that specifically support village shops?
We've recently signed up to the Plunkett Foundation, and we've also applied for a grant from Support Staffordshire.
Okay, but of course that's kind of what I meant was organisations that don't just provide money, but provide general support, just as we do for our parish councils.
I don't think so.
Have a look and see whether you can find an organisation called Community Action or Voluntary Action with your county name in as well. And if you can't find them, ask your equivalent Jackie who they are.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Because there is an active shops network. Yeah, but maybe you haven't connected with it yet.
Okay, I'll try that. Thank you.
Good luck, Gemma.
Thank you.
Lucy Bolter, I would love you to say to Jackie yourself what you said in the chat here, because I'm not sure she's seen it. Would you like to do that?
Oh, hello, Jackie. Hi, I'm Lucy. Well, it was something you said earlier when you started to describe something to do with all of the council stuff, and you said, and this is where I really will sound boring, and a big red flag went ding, ding, ding in my head. Can a flag go ding, ding, ding? Is it a bell? That's such a big apology. It's such a female thing. Oh, I'm very sorry, I'm about to be boring. And I thought, well, I'm here because I really want to hear what you want to say, what you have to say. So I don't think you're going to sound boring. And it did occur to me that a very wise woman once wrote that you do have the authority. So you're not going to sound boring at all.
You are absolutely right. And as you were speaking there, I was thinking to myself, I've got to take that away. Because actually what I do is reinforce it every time I say it. So one of the challenges for us is making town and parish councils more sexy. And every time I talk about it, the first thing I say is, this is really boring. So yes, I'm going to work on that, Lucy.
Fantastic.
It's my thing. But I've loved every minute of you speaking this evening, and not one bit of it has been boring. So no apology needed.
No, absolutely, and it is a very female thing to do, isn't it? We're constantly apologising for ourselves in one way or another. So thank you for raising that point, Lucy. So very true, part of your communication strategy. Satna, you also had another question for Jackie. Would you like to ask that? I think that's a very good question.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about affecting change, and I just wondered if, with what happened and all the publicity that's happened afterwards, are the men now better behaved in your presence? Do they respect your authority a little bit more?
It's very interesting because I've been a big fish in a small pond in Cheshire for a long time, so that knowledge about town and parish councils is quite a niche market, an exciting niche market, but a niche market nevertheless. And so I guess I've had in that sense, a position of power for a long time without particularly recognising it as such. So I don't really get challenged very often anyway. In fact, the last time somebody challenged me, it was a young man. I remember being affronted that he just wasn't simply accepting what I just told him to do with the parish council or whatever. And I sort of took, as women do, took that away with me and sort of thought, I need to think about that for a while. So yeah, I don't kind of feel that tension between men and women. The other thing is, I tend to work with mainly older men. Yeah, so here am I trying to encourage you all to change that, and there's a certain level of comfort in that. They're relatively safe most of the time.
That's
And of course, certainly in the case of Handful, the three problematic councillors have gone now, although they are still carping from the sidelines.
Of course.
Interesting.
We're in the spotlight, by the way. They're on the sidelines.
Yes, indeed. You've completely won through.
You've just made me think of something there. I don't very often say no to anything, as you've probably realised over this last 12 months.
Well, we're very grateful for that, actually.
But I did say no and had to keep reinforcing no to something that I was asked to do the other day. And this company, PR company, got in touch with this idea for, a great programme of, I can't remember what they were going to call it, but it was kind of like second chance. Not with the idea that there's been a breakup in a relationship, and there's a second chance to put things together. And they wondered if I'd like to meet the one or other of the three challenging chaps. You're out of your mind, or what? You really think they're the kind of people that are likely to sit down and look at better understanding how we got to where we are? Or do you not think that they will just simply be looking for ammunition? Really? So you can imagine it. They were, as a woman, we would be, ready to smooth, ready to heal, ready to be open, and all they're doing is scribbling down notes for what the next solicitor's letter will be. So I did say no to that one. They were quite keen.
Well, it's good to say no sometimes, definitely. So, Jackie, I'm interested to know, would you call yourself a feminist, and have you always had this, have you always sort of felt that, women need to have more strength and be heard more? I mean, has this been a theme of your life, or has it just kind of appeared now suddenly?
I think I'm kind of more given that label than taking that label. And I know this is going to sound incredibly twee, but I don't kind of think of things in those terms. I kind of I accept people for what they are, whether that's men, women, or all points in between. And I'm not seeing them as necessarily being different to me. Does that sound really weird?
No, not at all. No, it's just interesting to know whether, you've kind of had that as an overt kind of sort of feeling in your life, I suppose, or whether, I mean, I think you've, played the part of a feminist throughout, whether you call it that, or whether you've thought about that kind of openly, if you see what I mean, to yourself, or it's just...
I'm definitely isn't something I have thought of myself. I mean, sorry ladies, I don't have particularly good relationships with women. Probably starting off with the first one being my mother. And I think that often makes me very wary. I think it makes me wary of all sorts of people. Particularly, I think when you have someone very close to you that you can't trust, it then makes it very difficult to trust other people that perhaps don't have as much of a vested interest in you. So yeah, I kind of just see people as people. Some I like better than others, and some of them might be women, some of them might be men.
Yeah, no, that's you write about that in your book, and your mother as well. As you said, you wrote more about your mother than you expected to, which is interesting. But I do think, I mean, did you feel that when you were writing your book, because I think a lot of us do, that things just connections are made through the process of writing, things come out that you didn't really know that you thought until you suddenly find yourself writing about them?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the more practical stuff that your hints and tips bits, if you like, that they have been kind of like my philosophy of life. you know, and I've just collected. So one advantage of being old is you collect these as you go, and you know, you collect them as you go through life, and if you've had a lot of life, then you'll have a lot of these, you know, views that you hold. You know, it's like, I don't think I put it in the book, but it's like the Weaver motto. The Weaver motto is, it can always get worse. And I know that sounds terribly downbeat, but it is that pessimism of people, you know, when they say, oh, it couldn't be any worse. And I think, well, yes, it could, because you could be where you are at the moment with your house burning down. And that would be worse, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You know? So we catastrophize, you know,
Yeah.
and kind of, yeah. And
Yeah, no, absolutely.
particularly, I think when I started writing, you know, about my mother, they're not things that were necessarily new, but they were things that how do I put it? There's something about writing. Sometimes I write longhand, you know, like with a pen.
Yeah.
Because I often find that I can't slow down the thoughts in my head enough. I can't catch them. They've kind of like shot past and I've moved on to the next thing. So I find that writing things longhand is a good way of kind of slowing myself down. And I think doing that when writing the book made me think harder and longer about some of the things than I probably have done for a long time, if ever.
That's very interesting.
Yes.
How long did it take you to write the book?
It's so difficult to tell, because sometimes I would invest like chunks of time rather than sort of saying,
yeah,
no, I'm going to sit and write. So I might have been in the middle of, you know, answering work emails and then just pulled out the file and started typing some more. So 2 months, maybe.
Yeah, no, that's pretty quick. That's very efficient, especially given everything else that you're doing as well.
And don't forget, I had help.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the things that I thought was really good about the book, and I don't think I'd have come up with it, and that is the layout. I think
yes, no, the layout is great. It is very kind of engaging.
That's not my idea.
No, but when you're listening to the audiobook, that doesn't come into it. It's what you've written. It's your words that are there and that come across very powerfully. So yes, Faye, I wonder if you wanted to ask Jackie a question. Faye works in the construction industry, where she is in a very male environment and has quite a few issues around that. And I wondered if you wanted to ask Jackie anything, Faye.
Yeah, hi Jackie. I have to say, first of all, I just think you're amazing. I think the way you handled that was just fabulous. I've had meetings where I've had men like that, and I just wish I'd had the strength that you had. And I think you're a massive inspiration. So thank you. But going forward, as a female in a meeting similar to that, how would you recommend that someone deals with that? Because on Zoom it was a lot easier. You could just literally kick him out. How do you do that in real life?
Sometimes I think it's about preparation. And I don't just mean, you know, maybe a stiff drink beforehand. I mean, you know, if you know somebody is difficult and they're going to be difficult at the next meeting, then why not meet with them separately? You know, let's see if we can find out what it is that you know, that really sort of makes them tick. I think the other thing is being very clear on what it is you're trying to achieve and what you can let go. I think sometimes in meetings we're kind of like we're spread too thin. And I think this is something, I'm sure is something that I put in the book as well, which is you don't feel the same about every single thing in that meeting. So pick what's important to you. The other thing, of course, is that there is a tendency particularly when you have somebody loud, you know, in a meeting who's dominating the conversation, it's tempting to compete. So, you know, you're trying to get your point across, so you're either talking over them and if you're anything like me, you'll find that your voice is getting higher, and the more anxious you get, the more squeaky you sound, and now you've completely lost any credibility at all. You know, so I think as women, we often find it really difficult to kind of keep that emotion at bay. Frustration more than anything else. So try and head them off at the pass. focus on what's really important in that meeting, and let them burn out. They will eventually stop talking. You just, it's the more you try and cut across them, the more you try and shut them up, the longer you'll keep it going. If you just let them do it, they'll burn out. But I imagine construction must be one hellish place to be a woman.
Challenging, I think, Jackie, challenging.
Yes. So yes, Helen says, all great advice, Jackie. Might I add, be the calmest person in the room. So yes, absolutely. So Jackie, I've got one last question for you. And do you find that having written and published your book does give you more authority? I'm always banging on about how books give women especially authority. Do you find that having written your book makes you even more authoritative than you are?
I think it was, the whole process was cathartic. I know people often use that word when they talk about writing. I'm proud of what came out the other end. But I'm not sure that it gives me more authority. It perhaps, I guess, what it does for me is perhaps help other people see me. It's one of those things. I remember somebody so long ago saying to me, somebody I was working with, we know nothing about you. And I thought, I am always talking about me. I mean, how can you not know me? But the more I thought about it, the more I thought about, I talk about what I talk about the safe stuff. So I talk about what the children did, I talk about what the husband did, I talk about the new car, all these kind of things. But I don't very often give people an insight into the inner workings. And I think that the book did a little bit of that for me. So hopefully people could see that I'm not just this incredibly powerful person that kicks people out of meetings.
Well, that's absolutely brilliant. I'm just going to kind of end with a comment that Faye's just written in the chat, which is, Jackie Weaver, you so have the authority here. So Jackie, thank you so much for being with us. It's been the most amazingly entertaining, but really interesting and fascinating and sometimes funny hour. Thank you for spending your time with us, and thank you all for being here and asking great questions. And great to see you all. Thank you so much.